It began with a tiny fracture in the numbers, a whisper so faint it barely existed. There was no sound, no alert, no glowing red warning. Only a subtle deformation inside the telemetry of an aging satellite orbiting Mars, a spacecraft so old that most engineers expected noise in its sensors. But this was not noise. It was too clean, too deliberate, too consistent. A slow bend in the data, a drifting curve where the mathematics demanded a straight, obedient line. At first, no one noticed. The red planet was predictable, a cosmic relic carved by deserts, winds, and frozen nights. Nothing happened quickly there. Mars was a place where change took centuries, where silence ruled everything. But something had shifted. In the dim hours of a Martian dawn, the anomaly appeared again. The satellite's orbit nudged, not violently, not dangerously, but enough for mission control on Earth to lean forward in their chairs. A whisper of force, a brush of something unseen. Almost as if a massive presence, far away and uncaring, had passed its fingertips across the machinery circling the red planet. None of them knew what was approaching. Not yet. Because far beyond Mars, beyond the asteroids, beyond the reach of Jupiter's gravity, something enormous drifted into the solar system. Not a comet, not an asteroid, not anything born under our sun. It was the size of a small moon, cold as interstellar night, and carrying an ancient stillness that didn't belong to our planetary neighborhood. None of them knew what was approaching. Not yet. Because far beyond Mars, beyond the asteroids, beyond the reach of Jupiter's gravity, something enormous drifted into the solar system. Astronomers would give it a name later, but unlike Oumuamua or Borisov, it did not race through space with reckless speed. It approached like a glacier drifting between stars, slow, heavy, deliberate. Its trajectory was stable, unnatural in its precision, and its course aligned almost directly with Mars. Long before the object came into view, Mars felt it. For months, 3I Atlas moved inward, gliding through gravitational fields that should have perturbed it, twisting around invisible eddies in space with a grace no natural object its size should possess. Jupiter's pull barely touched it. Saturn's gravity seemed irrelevant. It sailed as though following a path it had always known. Then, as it crossed the orbit of the giant planets, something happened that scientists were not prepared for. Mars reacted. Not in its orbit, not in its spin, but in the invisible layer of magnetism that surrounds all planets, even those like Mars, whose magnetic fields died billions of years ago. The first signal came from NASA's MAVEN spacecraft, a spike, tiny but unmistakable, in the density of charged particles swirling high above the planet. A glow faint enough to escape the eye, but clear enough to write its presence across MAVEN's detectors. A flicker of magnetism, a ghost of an aurora, a whisper from a planet that should have been silent. This was not possible. Mars' magnetic heart had collapsed when Earth was still crawling with primitive microbial life. Its dynamos had cooled, its core had quieted. The planet had slept in magnetic darkness ever since, yet the data insisted something was awakening. Scientists checked everything: solar winds, cosmic rays, instrument drift. But the sun was quiet. The instruments were healthy. The universe offered no excuses. The disturbance was local, focused, and coming from the direction of the interstellar object. As the visitor approached, Mars began to shift in strange, delicate ways. Temperature gradients fluctuated in rhythmic pulses. The thin air became marginally denser, as if stirred by an invisible tide. Traces of ionized oxygen shimmered in coordinated patterns. Dust storms, usually chaotic and unpredictable, began appearing at consistent intervals. The storms weren't stronger, they weren't violent, but they were synchronized, rising like dancers keeping time with a cosmic drumbeat that no human ears could hear. It was as though Mars was listening, as if something were passing through it, not physically, not gravitationally, but electromagnetically, brushing across the entire planet the way a sound wave moves through air. Then came the tremors. InSight, the lander half buried in Martian dust, recorded a series of microquakes, each one small, each one harmless, but each one perfectly timed, repeating every few hours, repeating with the exact frequency of oscillations detected inside 3I Atlas's magnetic envelope. Earth watched as a silent conversation unfolded across millions of kilometers, a pulse from the visitor, a pulse from the planet, a rhythmic exchange across the emptiness. This was not life, not intelligence, not communication in the human sense, but it was resonance, pure planetary resonance, the kind that forms patterns in plasma chambers or carves ripples in sand under sound waves. Except this time, the chamber was a planet. The wave came from another star. As the object drifted nearer, the phenomenon intensified. A thin planet-wide sheath of charged particles formed around Mars, glowing softly in hues of violet and blue. The planet shimmered in a way no one had imagined possible, like an ancient ember remembering how to burn. Orbital images stunned researchers. Mars, the dead world, was glowing. This was not solar activity, not cosmic radiation, not atmospheric chemistry. Only one thing had changed. 3I Atlas had entered the neighborhood. Astrophysicists around the globe questioned the same thing. Its magnetic field was too stable, its plasma waves too organized, its interactions too controlled. It moved as though sculpted by physics that formed under a different sun. Then came the real shock. Deep below the Martian crust, in a region long believed geologically extinct, seismic models detected a shift. Not an eruption, not a rupture, but a slow upward lift of an ancient magma chamber. A few millimeters, barely anything. But on a world like Mars, such movement is enormous. Something was stirring that had slept for millions of years. When 3I Atlas reached about 40 million kilometers from Mars, the resonance peaked. Each rotation of the visitor created a small tug, not by gravity, but by timing. A kind of cosmic push arriving at exactly the right moment, amplifying the planet's internal vibrations. Mars had become a resonant instrument. One beat for the visitor, one beat for the planet. Then, for the first time in recorded history, every dust storm across the planet rose at the same moment. Synchronized, unified, timed perfectly with the magnetic oscillations wrapping themselves around Mars. Scientists called it the Martian echo, a phenomenon too subtle for the human eye, but too precise to be coincidence. And then the poles changed. Hidden beneath layers of ancient carbon dioxide ice, thin fissures formed, not randomly, but in patterns shaped by vibration. Perfect geometric alignments spread across the polar caps, like the surface of a drum responding to a single, deep tone. This wasn't intelligence. It wasn't construction. It was physics, resonance on a planetary scale. Yet nothing like it had ever been witnessed anywhere in the solar system. 3I Atlas was rewriting the behavior of planets simply by passing near them. As the visitor swept past the orbit of Mars, the planet released one final sign. A plume of excited hydrogen lifted from the upper atmosphere, faint, delicate, unmistakable. It did not escape into space. It did not alter the planet. But it confirmed what many suspected. Mars was interacting chemically with the magnetic sheath surrounding 3I Atlas. A planet was answering a presence from another star. And then, the moment arrived, the closest approach. Not a near miss, not a passing danger, a silent glide past the red planet. When it happened, the entire crust of Mars vibrated in unison. A single global tremor, a wave traveling from pole to pole, A breath from a world awakening, just for an instant. Then, everything stopped. The quakes faded into silence. The strange atmospheric glow dissolved. The dust storms returned to their natural chaos. Maven's instruments quieted. Mars exhaled and fell still again. But something had changed. Orbiters shifted slightly, as though nudged by an invisible tide. The polar patterns remained etched in ice. The subsurface magma chamber had risen, permanently, by a few millimeters. Mars had stirred, briefly, gently, but undeniably. And out in space, the visitor continued its journey, paying no attention to the world behind it. 3I Atlas shed no tail. It emitted no heat. It left no debris. It simply drifted onward, indifferent, ancient, unstoppable. Yet Mars carried the memory. Days after the visitor passed, a final aurora shimmered at the northern pole, a thin ribbon of blue dancing for only a moment before vanishing into the cold. There was no solar storm, no solar wind, no cause, just a last echo, a fading memory, a world whispering farewell. Scientists debated endlessly. Some argued for electromagnetic resonance. Others hinted at tidal coupling or plasma induction. Some theorized that 3I Atlas carried with it a fragment of its original star's magnetic field, a relic capable of interacting with planets like a tuning fork in the dark. But no explanation fit completely, because nothing in our solar system behaves like 3I Atlas. Nothing carries a magnetic presence spanning tens of millions of kilometers. Nothing moves with such cold precision. It is not alive, not intelligent, not artificial. But it is different, a magnetic traveler shaped by a star humanity has never seen. Mars was the first world to feel it, but another world waits ahead, Earth. And as 3I Atlas drifts deeper toward the inner planets, scientists face a realization too large to ignore. Mars felt that voice. Mars responded. And now, as the visitor continues inward, only one question remains.